안녕하세요 to everybody. Thank you to the organizers and to Lab Plan as well also for inviting me to provide me an opportunity to share with you some of the things that we have been learning from EVE Air Mobility as we have been working on the program for a number of years. But without further ado, let me just do a quick introduction and then also at the same time where we are at in terms of the program. So EVE was formerly a program that was actually a special project that was incubated within Embraer. And Embraer, as you all probably heard of them, Embraer is the third largest airframe manufacturer in the world. So we have already been manufacturing aircraft for more than 54 years. So with that, we have always been looking at what is disruptive to new technologies. And we always like to explore and go deep into it because Embraer, at the end of the day, is a very engineering company. And therefore, in 2020, we actually spin off, become a separate legal entity. And in 2022 of May, we actually were listed on the New York Exchange. So, and of course, in 2023, we also made further announcements along the way in terms of the program. And this is a quick view of the airplane itself, the eVTOL that we're building. It's a lift and cruise design where we do not have any tilt rotors or modulating rotors. A little bit unlike the other OEMs that are actually already are very advanced as well in the program. The reason we chose so is because we come from a aircraft manufacturing world whereby we highly value simplicity and we highly value reliability. And of course, at the same time, we also highly value safety because Embraer has a very enviable safety record for the past 54 years. The aircraft is 100% electric, powered by batteries, lithium-ion batteries. We're actually planning it for high utilization rate, unlike today's helicopters, where many helicopters today are already the version of the urban air mobility today. However, the helicopters does not have the reliability in terms and the necessary in terms of the utilization rate in order to bring the operational cost down. The aircraft itself for us, on day one, we actually have a 4+1, which means 4 passenger plus 1 pilot, because in the first place, in day one, in 2025, in 2026, we believe that the technology is still not matured enough for autonomy. So in this case, we strongly believe in day one, in our vision, that the aircraft will be piloted under visual flight rules, flying within the current ATM or ATC regulations. And of course, in this case, we also designed the aircraft for a very specific mission. In most of our studies that we have done, we realized that many of the urban movements, be it, you can consider as regional movements, you can call it urban movements. Many of the movements are between up to about 60 kilometers or up to about, between 50 to 60 kilometers. And therefore, in this case, we are building an aircraft that is not overly designed. And that's the reason why we design an aircraft that is 100 kilometers in range that allows us actually to fulfill more than 90+% of the mission that's actually within a city. And of course, more importantly, there's concern of us also because we come from Brazil, where Brazil actually has the 2 world largest helicopter operation cities in the world. One of them is Rio de Janeiro, and the other one is Sao Paulo. And in this case, you can also hear the noise footprint coming from the helicopters with their thumping blades as they fly across the city. So in this case, we are very concerned about community engagement, engagement about being community friendly, and we are looking very closely at the sound profile of the aircraft itself. So today for EVE, we actually hold the largest backlog in the industry in terms of letter intent. We have over 2,850 aircraft on letter of intent with 20 different customers coming from traditional airlines to helicopter operators. And we have been across, and many of the operators are also based globally across the globe, from the US to Europe to Middle East, Africa to even Asia Pacific. And of course, we are also working very closely with infrastructure partners because we need to plan where is going to be the ecosystem, how is the ecosystem going to be designed, and what we need to do actually to start to build the ecosystem. Because today, to be honest, a lot of focus is too much already on the aircraft itself that we tend to also forget or neglect the ecosystem that is required to support the aircraft. And each of the ecosystem can take 2 to 3 years to build. And therefore, we're actually, to be honest, quite pressed for time as well. So therefore, we are also very, very focused on ecosystem. And in this case, we are also working with lessors and various financing methods as well in order to offer the customers a variety of choices in terms of how they're going to finance the aircraft, whether they want it to be direct purchase or they want it to be under a sales finance or in any form or shape of leasing. And turning to quickly to our certification program right now, as you can see here, and this has actually been, we have been very consistent in many of our announcements and engagement with the media, and as well as part of our investor relations and events and so on and so forth. So we are talking about right now we're entering the 2024. We are already in the process of building our first pre-production prototype. So we are very unlike the other OEMs, where we don't require technology prototypes, because we do know the aircraft very, very well. There's only specific areas that we are lacking of information, and that's where we build specific rigs, test modelings in order to get the information that you need. But many of the aircraft itself, the aircraft is still an aircraft, and those information, we have more than 50 plus years of information of database in our database. So therefore, we are actually now moving towards pre-production prototype building, and we expect to start our test campaign with both ANAC, which is the Brazilian authority, and with FAA through the FAA-ANAC bilateral, and getting our certification by early 2026. We expect also to go into entry into service, and it's not for testing, but entry into service for commercial operation by the second half of 2026. So during the Paris Air Show, we actually have made an announcement that we are actually looking at San Francisco Bay Area. So together with one of our major LOI operator, which is United Airlines, with more than 400 over aircraft on order. So that's where we actually right now starting already a lot of the initial work. We call it implementation planning right now along the San Francisco Bay Area. And of course, that also not only involves the operator, that involves a lot of the community. As you can appreciate, around the San Francisco Bay Area itself, there's a lot of different level of counties, states, and so on. So there's actually more than, we counted, there's actually more than 100 over different government agencies that we need to consult, we need to engage from now onwards, and so that we can come together to build an ecosystem that is for the people itself. So there's a lot, as you can appreciate, there's a lot of collaboration work that is required in both a global and a local sense. So in this case, I would say that we're very local. We are global, but at the same time, we are very local. So these are some of the milestones that we have achieved this year. So we've actually, resulting in the final milestone there, you can see, we have actually, during the Paris Air Show, we have announced our battery supplier, which is BAE Systems, our propeller supplier, which is Duke, and the last one is more, I think was very curious for everybody, would be our electric motor supplier. In this case, it's with Nidec Motors. So Nidec Motors is, as you probably heard of them, they're actually one of the world's largest electric motor manufacturer with no aviation background. However, what we have done is that Embraer, our parent company, actually is stepping up and doing a joint venture with Nidec Motors to form Nidec Aerospace. So Nidec Motors will focus on the electric motor technology, whilst Embraer, with the 49% ownership, will bring in the expertise on aviation knowledge, know-how, and certification. So together, we actually, and we recently received the approval for Nidec Aerospace to be formed in the United States. So they will start to produce the electric motors, which will fit into Eve and the rest of the new generation aircraft that Embraer is going to build over the next few years. And also, we have announced our first production location, and this is not a computer rendering, so this is not a computer graphic. This is actually an actual factory location already standing. It is actually in Brazil, in Taubaté, and it's actually very close to current Embraer's production facility in San Jose dos Campos. And the reason why we chose there is because, first thing first, is the lowest cost of operation. And second thing is that it's very close, as it's very close to the embryo location, we are able to tap on to the existing workforce, the experienced aviation workforce that has been building aircraft for more than 53 years, more than 54 years, and they will be actually helping us to produce the first batch of production aircraft from this location here in Brazil. So touching about, I already given you a quick overview of Eve and our program, but let's turn our view now to Korea. So what is interesting about Korea itself? So we actually have done our study, we have actually done an analysis and looking at the demand itself. And these are the locations that we feel that there are the highest chance of actually having the highest number of eVTOLs being gathered together. So as you can see here, we estimated by 2035, we're talking about a 1.1 billion revenue stream from Korea alone. And the number of flights, probably if you look at it, by 2035, of course, all these are projection. We are talking about Seoul being the largest, but of course, we know Seoul has also its challenges in terms of the airspace control. But that being said, there are also a lot of things that's being done in the other areas which will flow back to Seoul eventually, maybe even helping improving in terms of the airspace control in Seoul. For example, in Busan, in Incheon, in Daegu, even in Daegu today, you can see there is actually number 4 on the size of the potential market. Of course, there's also Daejeon, Gwangju, and others. And of course, we also have heard about a lot of conversation about Jeju Island as well. So these are the different locations that we see has the greatest potential in terms of starting up. So in this case, not necessarily we have to focus all on Seoul, but there are other areas like, for example, in that Busan, Incheon, and so on and so forth, that can be the first movers in terms of the potential UAM or Advanced Air Mobility, AAM ecosystem in Korea. And in this case, where we come from, for us, as mentioned before, we look at the entire ecosystem. So we focus on 3 important pillars from Eve's perspective, as because today we don't really have anything in existence in terms of policies, regulations, to actually talk about eVTOL and urban air mobility. What is urban air mobility? What is advanced air mobility? I think at this point in time, there is still a lot of fuzziness in this, and that's the reason why we actually, for us as an OEM, we focus purely on the 3 important pillars that are important, that we see are important for the sustainability and the viability of urban air mobility or advanced air mobility, and later on the scalability of advanced air mobility. And of course, number 1 will be the aircraft that we are actually very focused on, tapping on to our number of years of the 54 over years of experience in terms of aviation manufacturing. Second one is the aftermarket solutions, which is actually very important because many times for me in my past role as a director of service and support for the entire Asia Pacific for embryo commercial aviation, many times my customers always ask me, now I have the airplane, how am I going to train my pilots? How am I going to train my mechanics? How am I going to provide spare parts? How am I going to provide maintenance? And so on and so forth. All these are important questions that we are already today designing and exploring, because today for urban air mobility or advanced air mobility, we no longer can think like commercial aviation where we think regional. Everything has to be scaled down to a city level, where everything has to be provided in a city level. For example, if this is called air taxi, so literally you're driving a taxi in Seoul. You don't drive the taxi all the way to Daegu to do maintenance. You expect maintenance to be provided to you in Seoul. So the same thing for the air taxi, the same concept. So this is another area that we're actually focusing on, the second pillar. The third pillar, which is actually very important, is actually the urban air mobility, air traffic management. So we actually came up with this concept. We started working on this concept since 2017. And in 2019, we were the first one to actually release a white paper that's under Embraer X called Urban Air Traffic Management, the concept and the software itself. And in 2020, we actually released a white paper together with Air Services Australia on urban air traffic management, which is today being quoted as a reference for Korea K-Uam Grand Challenge, the whole ecosystem itself for urban air traffic management. So what we have done in this work since 2017 and releasing the white paper in 2019, 2020, it has resulted as a very strong foundation for many of the ongoing conversation around the world. So in this case, let me show you some of the things that we've been doing. We have been working across the globe, as you can see here, concept operation, ConOps. And all these are actually because we are actually really work physically on the ground to actually get data and to derive policies and potential positionings on how we can actually manage the urban air traffic management. Because today, in Brazil itself, in Rio, we have the largest helicopter market, but however, at any one point in time, you only have 10 helicopters in the air. And why is that so? It's because many of these today, the air traffic are all being managed verbally, voice-based. And a pilot, when we through our testing, for example, in our real ConOps, we found that the helicopter pilots have to switch channel every 2 to 3 minutes, switch control tower. So imagine you have hundreds of aircraft in the air, and every person has to switch channel. That means you're going to have a lot of ATC controllers, which is much more than what we have today. So in this case, we realized that there's a need, in this case, to jump to the next system, which is a digital-based air traffic management. However, not from an IT perspective, but from an ATC level program coming down to take care of the requirements of the urban air mobility or AAM, because the urban air mobility or AAM today will require you to carry passengers. So the safety level is much more significant than just an IT program. So in this case, that's where we actually have been focusing. And you can see here, even like the Japan ConOps, where we actually released early this year in March, there was a white paper that was released, or a report that was released by the Japanese MLIT, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. So this was actually co-authored together with Kanematsu, but inside the concepts on the urban air traffic management, it comes from EVE, because we are one of the participants or one of the authors for this report. And with all this knowledge and everything, we are able to develop operational blueprints. So as I mentioned, we work with JCAB, we work with Miami-Dade, the government itself in Miami, Florida, to develop AM concepts, operations, ecosystems development, concepts of safe scaling, and of course, more importantly, the most important is stakeholder engagement. We need to engage with the community early on, because whatever we do will have a strong impact on their life in terms of sound profile, in terms of the land that needs to be demarcated or rezoned in order for the vertiport operate, so in order for vertiport to be sited. And on top of that, as a side-by-side thing as well, we have partnered many leading regulators together with UKCA, with Australia Air Services, to talk about urban air traffic management, air services integration, safe scalability of UAM operations. And this results in us actually recently having an agreement that we signed together with Mobiation, which is one of Korea's own first urban air mobility company. And we actually signed with them as they are the first operator for us in Korea who have signed on with us on our UATM solutions. So this UATM solution is actually now live. We are actually already in the process of organizing our first live trial. It will happen in November in the UK with one of our helicopter operators. The system will sit side by side with the existing helicopter operations, giving them the extra situation awareness to control and manage the helicopter operations. So this is actually a very important scale. And again, also as part of this whole conversation with Mobiation in Korea, we are also going to support them in their tests and trials in Incheon metropolitan city as well. So I hope this gives you enough color, with a very quick 15 minutes in terms of all the things I've covered. I know I'm going very quickly, but I hope that this will give you a sufficient understanding and appreciation of where we are at today and how we are working collaborative and globally in a local way, to work with everybody to bring the urban air mobility or advanced air mobility to life.
Oh.
Thank you.